Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Crypto Stu here in the Crypto Stu studio. I have an interesting podcast that I watched, and I have some clips from it that I wanted to share with you guys because I really think they're relevant to the whole Bitcoin game and where Bitcoin's going and that kind of thing. And first, I'm going to share a story with you. First, the story, and then I will go ahead and share the clips. So, I was in New York. It was the early 2000s. I had a friend named Charlie who worked at a fancy schmancy restaurant named Danielle, which is in Manhattan. And he was a sous chef there. And so I met him after a shift, and he said, let's go get some drinks. So he took me to this bar, and everyone in the bar was wearing those checkered pants that the chefs wear. It was a chef bar. I didn't know there were chef bars, which is what I said to him. I said, I didn't know there were chef bars. He goes, well, this is a chef bar. He said that some chef retired from chefing and opened a bar, so to support him, they all go to that bar after their shifts to get drinks. So everyone in there is a chef, and then me, all right? So everybody's having a good time. They're all talking to each other, about fresh dill and whatever's in season, and getting hammered. And then I noticed there was one group that just didn't talk to anybody else. And finally I pointed to Charlie. I pointed to that group and I said, Charlie, how come they don't talk to anybody? Aren't they chefs? He goes, yeah, they're chefs, but those guys, yeah, those are pastry chefs. I go, so? And he goes, yeah, pastry chefs and regular chefs hate each other. And I said, why? And he said, each one thinks the other one does nothing. He says, a pastry chef, if they add a little bit too much baking powder to a dessert, it's ruined. They have to start all over. And they look at a regular chef and they're like, oh, I'll put in some salt here, and I'll put in a little more vegetable stock, and wee. And it's also mishmash, and there's no precision to it. They look at a regular chef and think that guy does nothing. I have to be exact, or I have to start all over again. And a regular chef looks at a pastry chef and he says, that guy's just following a recipe. A machine can do what he's doing. He's not doing anything. I'm layering flavors here, and a robot could do what he's doing. He does nothing. So each one thinks the other one does nothing. And I said to Charlie, I said, but you're all on the same side. I said, you're in the same kitchens, providing meals. If the main meal is good and the dessert stinks, people aren't going to come back, and vice versa. Like you're all together. And he said, well, we're all maybe on the same side, but we don't have to like each other, and we don't. So I think about that when I think about Bitcoin versus gold, because Bitcoiners, if you listen to a Bitcoiner explain why Bitcoin's going to go up in value, and you listen to a gold person explain why gold is going to go up in value, they make pretty much the same arguments. The government's way in debt, they're going to have to print money, stuff you've heard a million times. But meanwhile, most Bitcoiners think gold is a stupid investment, and most gold people, they hate Bitcoin. Like, they hate it. They think it's based in nothing, and it's just a speculation, and gold is the only thing that's real. So I always equate those two things. But I'm different because I like gold and I like Bitcoin. I've been buying gold for 25 years, and there was no Bitcoin 25 years ago. And when I finally learned about Bitcoin, I started buying Bitcoin too. But I still buy gold and silver. So there's this guy, Lawrence Lepard, who is like me, but he's smart and rich and successful, but like me in that he likes both Bitcoin and gold, which is very rare. And he goes on these YouTube channels and he pitches both Bitcoin and gold and why he thinks they're going to go up. This first clip is about 2 minutes long, but it's well worth it. He really sums up the situation the United States is in and what's about to happen, or when. It doesn't say when it's going to happen, but what has to happen. And I think it's worth listening to. So I'm going to play that for you guys. And I got 3 clips here, but the last 2 are not nearly as long. But this one's about 2 minutes, so enjoy.
Average.
Yeah, so here's a scenario of how it unfolds. The 10-year goes to 5%. The 1 year and the 2 year go to 6 or 7%. The federal deficit, blows out to north of 2 trillion, on its way to 3 or 4. Interest expense on the federal debt, starts to approach 1.5 or higher. It's a death spiral. The more they run a deficit, the more they've got to borrow. The more the bond market continues to fail because there aren't enough buyers for those bonds. And this is the death spiral that James coined this term, right? The more the bond market starts to fail, the more interest rates go higher. The higher the interest rates go, as we all know, the government made the enormous mistake of not terming out a lot of their debt. I mean, there's an enormous maturity wall. In the next 2 or 3 years, they've got, $8 trillion of debt rolling over, maybe more. And so that's all going to be done at the short rate, which is now 5.3.
Yeah.
Imagine that's 6 or 7, right? I mean, and you can see, I mean, this is the airplane that's auguring in, and pulling back on the elevator is what's making the spin, is making the auguring in tighter, because interest rates go higher, costs go higher, more bond gets sold, blah blah blah. It's a death spiral. I mean, to me, and at some point in time, enough participants start to realize, holy shit, there's no way they're going to get out of this thing unless they print to a level that's just beyond absurd, and therefore I've got to get into some money that's not tied to the government, and that's the two choices are gold and Bitcoin, and that's why to me the clue that this is going on. I mean, real interest rates have gone up over 500 basis points in the last year and change, right? I mean, that should have destroyed gold. I mean, gold would have gone from 1950 to 1600, but it didn't. It's right at 1950. It's within 6% of its all-time high. That should have destroyed Bitcoin. And yet Bitcoin went from 15,000 to 30,000. It's the best performing asset this year. It's up, I guess it's 28, 29 now, but it's up 75% year to date. Why? Because those two asset classes can smell what's coming. They know that the big print is ultimately coming. Doesn't matter what the hell the Fed says. Doesn't even matter what the economic statistics are. I loved Nat's recent interview with Saylor, where he basically said, I don't even look at that macroeconomic stuff because all those numbers are made up. They're total bullshit.
Yeah. CPI is made up. It's all bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got 40% unemployment. They're telling me it's going up from 3.0 to 3.2. It's like, give me a fucking break.
That guy is so great, but he really summed it up there. That's the spot the United States government is in. And there's no economist and I watch these economists on YouTube all the time. None of them have said that the U.S. can get out of this from anything but printing. Some of them are inflation guys who think we're headed toward, a lot of inflation. Some of them are deflation guys. I even see soft landing guys. But none of them, I haven't seen a single one who says, no, the U.S. is just going to raise taxes a bunch and be just fine. Or no, the U.S. is just suddenly going to cut government spending and be just fine. Nobody says that. Everybody agrees the only way out of this is to print tons of money. They debate when that'll happen or why it'll happen, but they all agree it's going to come. All right, here's the next clip. This one's much shorter, but this guy really knocks it out of the park.
Of that interest rate rise, we just
so like Saylor, I'm unbelievably bullish for really three reasons. One, we're going to have something happen that's going to force them to change policy and go in the other direction. Two, we've got a halving coming up, and three, we've got the Bitcoin ETFs coming sometime within 6 to 9 months, which are going to unleash enormous amount of demand into a very tiny market. And so I just don't see how we're not at Bitcoin between 100 and 400,000 sometime within the next 2 years. I mean,
He says Bitcoin to 100 to 400,000 sometimes within the next 2 years, and he makes a pretty good case for why. I sort of agree with him, but let me play the last clip and then I'll give you guys my opinion if you care. Oh, I will say, to the interviewer's credit, in this particular case, he actually did ask the natural question, which is, you guys are describing a lot of things that would be deflationary. And meanwhile, you're saying Bitcoin is going to go to the moon, which would be a sign of inflation. So it doesn't make any sense. Like, shouldn't there be a big downturn before this inflationary? Won't both of these assets go down in value before they go up in value? And Lepard answers the question. So here's the answer to that question. So the same way I crapped on the interviewer in the last one because he didn't ask the natural follow-up question, kudos to this guy because he actually did.
I'm not even sure we get the down on this one. I mean, I think I think Bitcoin and gold already smell what's coming. And so as a result, whether this comes immediately or in 12 months, doesn't really matter. I think they're both bullish, as a result of that. Mm-hmm. When it comes and when the Fed reverses, when they clearly are done, quote unquote, these things are going to take off like scalded dogs.
I agree with him there. I don't know if I agree with him about the lack of a downturn. I've made a video about this. In a crash, everything goes down. If there is some major deflationary event. I think everything goes down in such an event. So, but in the long term, yeah, of course, once they turn the money printers back on, Bitcoin, gold, silver, they're all going to really just take off, because this money printing, the next money printing will be a lot. I actually said this to a friend of mine a couple months ago. I was trying to explain. It's just unbelievable what's going on in this economy. There are so many inflationary and deflationary circumstances happening at the exact same time. I described the economy like it's a warehouse that is on fire. All right, so the warehouse is on fire. The fire is the inflation. All right, but on top of it being on fire, there's 2 tons of snow on the roof. And the roof can only hold 1 ton of snow. But right now, the roof's holding. The walls haven't buckled yet. So the question is, which one's going to get it? Is the fire going to keep burning so hot that the snow becomes irrelevant and the factory comes down? Or is the snow going to crash the roof and put out the fire, and the factory is destroyed nonetheless? And then there's the slim, but you have to admit that there's a possibility, chance that the fire melts just enough of the snow that the roof is okay, and the water that comes down from the melted snow puts out the fire, and the factory is fine the next day. I know it's a slim chance, but is there a chance of this soft landing? Yeah, there's a chance. I just don't see it happening. So what am I doing? Because, I'm a Bitcoin guy. I'm also a gold and silver guy. I also like Ethereum. And really what I've done the best with in my investing career has been speculative altcoins. But right now, with everything the way it is, to give a baseball analogy, all right, you're on first base, there's no outs, and somebody hits a long fly ball to left center field, and you don't know whether or not the outfielder's going to catch it or not. So what do? You play it halfway. So that's what I'm doing. I'm half in cash. Half of what I would usually be invested is in just cash, so that in case things do go to crap, I'll have cash on the side to scoop up the cheap Bitcoin and cheap Ethereum that will be as a result. And the rest of it is split between, so I'm half in cash, and the other half is split between Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver. Mostly Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I still own my gold and silver. So that's where I am. I don't know what else to do. There's just too many inflationary and deflationary circumstances right now, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. So I'm just trying to protect myself, so either way I'll be relatively all right. So that's the plan. Until next time, Crypto Stu, signing off.